All right. Hey, everybody. And thanks again for joining me on another episode of the Remarkable Coach podcast. I'm your host, Micheal Pacheco. And today with me, I have Lori Irvine. Lori is an expert in professional empowerment. She motivates teams to maximize their capacity for excellence. She inspires by supporting clients in the discovery of their true potential. And she helps people find their way and serve their purpose in a harmonious work environment. Lori, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
So happy to have you. Tell us, so I like to always start this podcast by inviting the guest to just talk a little bit about yourself and about what got you into coaching.
Okay, so I used to work in organizational development for a long time in the hospital industry. And from that, I got interest in working with teams, nurses, and leaders on what is going to be the best way to be able to provide the best inpatient care. And that involved being the best that you could be as an employee at the organization. So part of that had to do with how do I do my best and be able to serve my purpose and feel like that I get rewarded at the end of the day. And what is it that drives me the most? And what are my strengths, my abilities, those things? So it was to help make people aware of that and to train people in the way that they wanted to develop and grow in those ways. In order to be able to provide that. And from that, I was in different, other than coaching. And from that, I mean, the rewards from that are, ultimately having people feel comfortable in their position and what they love to do, and it's what they do best, and to be able to do patient care and serve clients in the best way that they can.
Awesome. Nice. Tell us a little bit more about your ideal client. Who is it specifically that you're working with? Who's your ideal client?
The ideal client is the client that invest in the coaching because they know what it's all about. They understand the commitment that it takes in order to be able to fulfill it and to be able to get their outcomes. That has to do with what do I have to do? What do I have to invest? And it's not the investment of money, but it's more investment of the time and the energy and effort to make it work. Also, to be able to model behavior and to be able to mentor teams from a leadership perspective in order to make it work. Because without the effort put in, then you will not get the outcomes that are what you perceive or what you hope to happen as your vision.
Yeah, 100%. Can I share a brief story real quick?
Yes, please.
I've got a story to share. Oh boy.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Boy. I've been on a lot of calls today. I've got a story to share about financial investments and how important that is to emotional investment. Okay. So there was a study done. I don't know how long ago this was, maybe a decade or so. And they brought people in and they had three wines. They set down 3 different wines in front of them. One was labeled inexpensive. One was labeled mid-priced and the other was labeled expensive. Okay. And they had the people, right, that were doing this study, taste the wines and rate the wines differently, right? How is this wine delicious? Is it on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being not good and 3 being the best? What is it? Well, as you might suspect, the inexpensive wine was rated to taste the worst. The mid-priced wine was the mid, and the most expensive wine was rated as the best tasting wine. Okay. Not really very surprising so far, but here's the trick. All 3 glasses of wine had the exact same wine in it. They were the same wine. It was the exact same wine, but the impression, right, upon the person was different based on what they thought the price tag was. So when you have someone make a financial investment in something, they are emotionally more invested in that as well. It was something I thought was interesting and kind of relevant to what you were talking about in terms of, you got to find someone who is willing to invest not only their finances, but also their time and their energy into what you're doing.
Absolutely, because it speaks to what you value, right? And if you want to make change happen, you have to put the effort into it. And I think you have to see it from a perspective of what am I going to get from this? And what do I have to put in order to receive the rewards from that? And it's not just from yourself as the client, but it's from your followers as a leader to be able to influence them in the way that they understand that, and not from your perspective, but what's in it for me as
Mhm.
far as those people who are working with you, right? Because they're part of your team. You're not in a bubble here. It's like a team effort, and the team
Mhm.
effort has to be led by the leader, and the leader is the one who mentors the behavior, models the behavior, and kind of like, sets the course for the ship to move forward, right?
Mhm.
If you don't have a direction, you're not going to be able to engage people in paddling forward on it, right? So
Mhm.
that's definitely the whole perspective, and the influence is crucial in order to have outcomes and success in a coaching program. Absolutely.
Yeah, lovely. Awesome. Would you talk to us a little bit about your methodology? So when you're working with your ideal client, how do you work with them? What sorts of things do you do with them to help them, overcome the issues that they're working on?
Okay, so the key to be able to have an objective assessment of what's working, what's not working, and how to assess and evaluate what are things that need to be improved. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, uh, clients may think that that's cut and dry, but it truly is not. So you have to get an expert in there that has to be able to truly evaluate what are the real problems, to define what they are, to identify what the true problems are, because you can't solve a problem unless you know for sure what it really is. And a lot
Mhm.
of the times there's some gray areas in that. So to find somebody that can be able to access and survey and find out what are the real issues, to be able to have teams that are feeling comfortable with expressing that so they can explain what they see as the issue, and to be able to break it down as to what are some of the solutions, how are we going to arrive at those solutions, who are we going to have involved in achieving the outcomes in order to facilitate positive change with action items and follow through in order to support it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so without that, you don't have a roadmap of, it's almost like having somebody say, do you want to go somewhere on a vacation, and not giving them any kind of information where you're going and where you're headed. So
Mhm.
it's very important for leaders to have a vision and have everybody engage in a vision and understand what their contribution is to make that happen. So they're invested as an individual, not as doing something for somebody else, but for themselves,
Sure.
so that they feel that they're serving their purpose and the means to an end,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Would you talk a little bit about the impact of working with a solutions-based mindset?
So a solutions-based mindset is more about how are we going to identify problems, as I spoke to before. How do
Mhm.
we identify problems? How do we feel comfortable in presenting those problems? And how do we come at them with a solutions-based mindset so that we are able to get in the place of being able to solve the problem rather than complain about it?
Mhm.
So we come from a position of anything that comes up as a problem that doesn't have an attached solution or a way to resolve it is a complaint, which is not productive. So
Mhm.
how do we work with teams so that they see that, okay, this is a problem, let's be the first person to be proactive and figure out how do we resolve that? What are some of the solutions that we can come up with in order to fix something, and have that in place before we complain about it or bring drama about it, right?
Mhm.
So it's almost like building self-management, in the sense that we empower our teams to be able to bring in ideas and give them a comfortable place to express ways to fix things, or actually bring in innovation or new ideas, and be comfortable in a place where there's an acceptance of that, so that it's welcome and it comes as part of a team meeting or communication so that they feel comfortable in expressing that to leadership, because that's actually a benefit to leadership. Leaders benefit from that, right? So,
Yeah.
but not all team members see that as a venue for that being okay. And I think it's important to bring that about and to facilitate an environment or a workplace culture that encourages that, right?
Yeah, for sure. What sort of things, so when you're working with your clients on this stuff, what sort of things do you typically struggle with as a coach, and how do you overcome those?
So most of the things that are barriers and blocks that happen with making coaching a successful outcome is clients that are not engaged, clients that are not involved, clients that don't see it as, oh, it's this person's accountability, it's that person's accountability. Number one is leadership involvement and engagement in the process. Without that, the followers are not guided and geared towards what the end game is. The team needs to know what the end game is. The team needs to know what the vision is of the ownership to know where the company is going. They need to know what the direction is, where the company is heading. I always say that the owners chart the course, the office managers and the managers lead and steer the ship, and everybody else has to paddle, or you don't go anywhere, you go around in circles, right?
Yeah.
So those are, I think, the keys to coaching working. The biggest barriers to coaching is the coach providing all the tools and all the things that are necessary to make change happen. And the blocks are typically resistance to change, a lack of change management, a resistance in some kind of way, and not following through on things that are taught and implemented or should be implemented that aren't followed through on.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest barrier. And I think that's one thing that needs to be recognized when you're investing in coaching. If you're not willing to put the work in, you can't expect the benefits of what coaching will bring. Right.
And ultimately we're talking about strong leadership, right? Someone who can not just tell people what to do, but someone who can be a beacon of example, right? And show people what the direction that the company is going to take on a given initiative.
Absolutely, because if you're a leader and you say, okay, you know what, let's have the coach come in. You know what, you deal with the team. I'm going to be working in the back. Let me know if you need me. That right away shows that the leader is not showing value to the coaching. And if they're not engaged in it, they're not going to be able to get the engagement from their team. So that's a lack of effort, and that's it doesn't set the program up for success, right? You have to be engaged with it yourself because you're all in the same boat. You're all working towards the same vision. The team effort comes from the leader being involved in that change and engaged in that. And everybody else has to see how they fit in as an individual, not just as a team member, but as an individual of what's in it for me, because that's what drives people. That's where the motivation comes from, is the self-motivation from how do I benefit from this? So how am I going to benefit? Why is it important to me? And bringing about that importance and having team members recognize and shining the light on in the awareness of how they fit in and how they contribute. That's what the key is to be able to coach people forward. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, talking about leadership, I think that's actually a good kind of segue into you have a strong belief about failing forward, right? And embracing and learning from your mistakes and pivoting and adjusting course based on those things that you've learned. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the trouble comes with a lot of the trouble comes with perfectionism. So when we talk about blocks and barriers of moving forward, some of it comes from perfectionism, where it's like, well, you know what, if I can't do that perfectly, or if I have to move towards a system that I am vulnerable about it because I'm an expert at the old system and I don't want to do the new system because I don't know it enough yet, or I'm not going to be great at that, or I'm not going to be the quickest at that right away, right?
Mhm.
So part of the blocks and barriers come from not feeling comfortable with or not feeling the permission to not know it right away, but being comfortable with making mistakes along the way and the support of the team in order to be able to move forward and being vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I don't know this, or I'm not getting this, or I need support with this.
Mhm.
That is, I think that's part and parcel to coaching working, is being able to say, wow, this was the plan, but this is where we're at right now, and we're not where we want to be. So
Yeah.
we need to make some changes. And like you said, like we need to pivot, or we need to change it up or customize in a way so that
Mhm.
it's more palatable and it's at a better pace that
Mhm.
works and is customized according to what works for the people that are involved, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise people will drop off and disengage, and when you feel overwhelmed or you feel defeated, it doesn't excite you and motivate you to move forward, right? So
For
it's
sure.
like being able to own the problem, express the problem, and work on the problem together, because I think that builds better relationships, and being realistic about change doesn't happen in a day or 2 days. Like it takes time, it takes transition, it takes
Yeah.
learning, and it takes falling down once in a while, right? And
I
that's
think, yeah,
okay.
I think it's super important. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Um, Lori, tell us about some of your big wins that you've had in coaching.
Big wins with respect to team development. Let me give you an example of a team development. So I've worked with leaders who, for example, maybe somebody that's had to work with. For example, I have had a dental practice where one of the dentists wanted to retire and sell the practice to somebody, but still wanted to associate at the practice. Okay.
Mhm.
So they have different styles, and they approach things differently. The
Mhm.
first leader, the first owner of the practice, was a person that was more focused on people, a little bit less on the business side of it. And the way that their approach was a little bit different. They've had trust built with the team over years in those things. So it made it very difficult for the new owner to come in to buy the practice and to carry on as practice owner,
Uh-huh.
and for people to get their headspace around, this is the new owner and this is who we report to, right? So one of the things was, just as a matter of personality, was how do we move forward? One of the key problems was there was a conflict between the two leaders.
Mhm.
So obviously they had a different style. The first leader, and that was the former owner of the practice, was one that was a little bit more people focused and didn't focus a lot on performance production. And that doesn't make it right or wrong, because you need both of those to balance. But
Mhm.
at the same time, that's the way that it was seen by the team members. The new leader comes in, and the new leader looks at things from a business perspective, which is important also, but not so much focus on the team. It didn't know everybody like the first leader did.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think the biggest wins that I ever had was, we were talking about SMART goals. So specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely.
Yep.
And, when you think of SMART goals, you think of, okay, production numbers, you think of, oh, geez, what do we have to do as far as percentage productions, whatever. But for this particular thing, one of the biggest barriers were the team dynamics and the leadership dynamics. So one of the answers to that was, okay, so what are we going to do for a SMART goal for this? How do we do a SMART goal for two leaders that don't get along at the practice? It builds a toxic environment. How do we fix that?
Mhm.
So the outcome was, and what I worked with them on was agreements that had to be made at the leadership level. And the one leader's agreement was, he had to say hello, or at least speak to and address the other leader when they came into the practice every day, because it used to be radio silence. Don't talk to this person. It was awkward silence.
Mhm.
And then the other leader had to work with, personality differences and anger management and all those type of things, which you would not think of in a normal business scenario, but it's necessary.
Sure.
So that would be a good example of a win, in that the one leader who used to get a stomach ache every time he would pass by the practice, because of all the angst and all the tension that was brought about from a team standpoint, or a lack of synergy, that had gone forward just because of the smart goal of, I will say hello to this man every time he comes in and I'm here.
Mhm.
And the other man saying, I will be able to manage my behavior because of the tools from coaching,
Yeah.
and in the way that I behave. And it was a huge difference. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but there's something that people don't look at. And
Yeah.
I think it's something important to recognize and to bring value to that, because it makes a huge difference,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to point out too, like, as you're working on people problems, that translates to the balance sheet, right? The fixing people problems translates to the bottom line.
Absolutely, because systems don't work unless the people behind the systems are invested in making it happen,
Yeah, totally,
right?
totally. Totes my goats.
Yeah, yeah.
So circling back to learning from your failures, tell us about some failures that you've had where maybe you've screwed up and learned something from it, and adjusted course and improved down the road.
Okay, so my biggest learning, and this is only happened in the last few years, is that there should never be an expectation that your clients have to like you.
Okay.
You don't need to be best friends with your clients. Your
Mhm.
job as a coach is to be able to help them to move forward. And
Mhm.
sometimes that involves a push, and finding the balance between the push to the edge and throwing them off the edge
Yeah.
is something that is very important in coaching.
Uh-huh.
So my learning is, it's okay to be assertive. It's not okay to be aggressive, and it's not okay to be passive. And to be able to find that balance between aggressive and passive, to find being assertive and being confident, I
Yeah.
think is a key to coaching. And it is the key to building the relationship with the client, so that they feel confident in
Mhm.
engaging and following through and implementing systems
Mhm.
according to what you put out there is what's true and what's relevant, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah, that tracks. That tracks. That makes sense. Um, cool. What recommendations do you have for new coaches who are trying to, maybe break into coaching?
Being different and customizing.
Okay. Differentiation. Yeah.
Not cookie cuttering, like not expecting the same result from a different dynamic. So no company is the same. So McDonald's is not the same as Burger King. It's not the same as A&W. It seems the same because they all sell burgers, but the end game is this: they should have, and if they don't, you should help them with that as a coach. They should have a different vision. They should have a different mission. Everybody should understand what the future looks like and what they strive to do, and
Hmm.
everybody should be on the same page with that.
Hmm.
So being able to customize them according to who they are, and then that's the first step, where they're going. Second step is, where are you located? There's McDonald's in a lot of different countries, and it's a different scenario, right?
Yeah.
So who do you serve? Who do you serve? Who is your team? Who are the people that you represent? Who are the people that you serve? All those things have to be included in what is the coaching customization look like? So if I am going to coach something in, um, I do a lot of work in Canada. So if I do something in British Columbia and Vancouver Island, it's going to be different than in a client in Newfoundland. It's going to be different in Texas. It's going to be different in Michigan. We teach the same content, or we teach the same values or the same ways of doing things, but it's a whole new ball game when it's in a different place with different guidelines, with different team members, with different people that you serve, customers, and different leaders. So I think that the biggest thing that I think coaches fall back on is you can't do the same. You can't be the best for everybody. You have to be able to figure out what do they need the most. Let's let them do what they do well and continue that. And let's find out what are the problems to solve and what are the key issues that are things that need to be addressed to fix things or to address any kind of deficiencies, and focus on those and customize them in the way that it's going to work and serve that client the best according to where they are, where they live, who they serve, and who their team is. I think that's key, 100%.
I love it. I love it. There's two things I want to call out there that I really kind of resonated with me. Is number one is you can't make everybody happy.
No.
Right. So you gotta figure out who your niche is, get specific about it, figure out what your mission is and who your niche is. And I know, so here's something. When you're first starting out with any business, whether it's coaching or not, when you decide who you're going to serve, it can very much feel like you're cutting your legs off at the knees, because you're like, I can help everybody. Right.
Yeah.
I can help everybody.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you tell someone I can help everybody, it doesn't feel personal, and it doesn't feel like you can help them, right? The person that you're talking to. So when as you niche down, as you decide specifically who you can help, who you're going to help, you're able to more effectively communicate that. And that's the important part.
Absolutely. You can't take it on your own. So there's a lot of things that I do with certain clients, and I have I have a really close connective group that I work with that I can call on for their expertise. So we are 100% focused on what are you good at? What can you do? What are your capabilities? And we don't go beyond that. So when I need to call on somebody for, let's say, administrative stuff or accounting stuff or things that have to do with numbers or break-even points, I have a person that I know and I trust that I can count on for that. When I need to call on somebody or somebody with a clinical background or somebody that can provide things that I can't provide, I will call on that person to provide that. If I have somebody else that has to deal with illegals or things like that, I will call and I have to be okay with that and welcome that. And they all have to be okay and welcome to be able to collaborate with me on that. And that is key, because you can't move beyond what your capacity is. And I think that is very important to know and very important to respect. And I think part of coaching is to be able to surround yourself with people that can support you with things that you know that you're going to need outside or secondary support for in order to serve your client in the best way that they'll be served.
Yeah.
Yes.
I dig it. The other part that I was going to say that resonated with me was you were talking about, oh shit. About kind of just figuring out who you're going to, again, back to figuring out who you're going to serve and figuring out what you're going to do in your business. So this idea of basically coming up, just writing down your plan, visualizing what does success look like for me in this business, and writing down a plan. I think that's a great first step that a lot of people skip over. And frequently, you'll just, again, back to the thing where I can help everybody is actually not very helpful, I think.
What was that last part that you said? Because you cut out there, hon.
I was saying, spending time coming up with a plan is better than just going out into the world and saying, I can help everybody, because that actually is not very helpful.
Absolutely. Okay. So for somebody that's coming out to look for coaching, I think the best thing to do is starting fresh before you even hire a coach is to
Mhm.
say, okay, this is where I'm at with my business. This is where I want to be 3 to 5 years from now.
Sure.
So 3 to 5 years from now, my ideal business is going to look like this.
Mhm.
I'm going to expand this. I'm going to slow down on this. I'm going to, this is what I want.
Mhm.
Okay. And that is, and we do coaching on that. So there can be coaching to help people come up with what's called the vision.
Sure.
The vision is, what does it look like? My ideal team, my ideal business, and my ideal, patient base or customer base.
You bet.
So that is, what does that look like to me? So I want a vision of a team that's competent and high technology or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
I have patients that or customers that are compliant, that value the service, all that.
Mhm.
And I have a business that is going to grow or it's going to specialize or whatever that is. I think first and foremost, that's what's important for the leadership to discover and figure out.
Mhm.
Being able to bring the team in once that's decided, bringing the team in and seeing how they contribute to that and
Mhm.
how they're necessary for that. That's acknowledgement and empowerment in itself. And I
Yeah.
think that's the second step, right?
Mhm.
And when you can bring that about and then sell them on, you know what, in order to be able to do this and to achieve this,
Mhm.
we will find, we will get coaching or we will support you with this, right? And still be able to do our jobs and support you with this with a third party to be able to support you in making that happen. And that alone is acknowledgement. So a
Yeah.
lot of people see, their business as well. Acknowledgement means, oh, everybody needs a raise. But the truth is, acknowledgement can still come from being able to teach people to do their jobs better, or teach people about how they can flourish in their careers and
Mhm.
get value and reward from serving a purpose every day, right?
Mhm.
So I think
You bet.
all those things are a lot of times missed, but need to be considered and are foundational in order to make coaching work,
Mhm.
right? From the get-go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think sometimes getting, figuring out what the individual employees on the team value is can be a very personal thing because not everyone necessarily wants a raise, right? Some people may want more vacation time. They may want more time off to spend time with their family, for example. Well, I think we got.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? You can actually do like a study on this, and I learned this from when I worked at the hospital. Is everybody was worried about, in a hospital situation where you have, part of it is, part of it's management, part of it's unionized. But one of the things that we found out was by doing team surveys
Mhm.
is it wasn't necessarily pay that people wanted. They wanted recognition for a job well done.
Mhm.
So when you did team satisfaction surveys, it was like, well, I just want somebody to recognize me, not when I do something wrong,
Mhm.
but to recognize me for what I do right. And
Sure.
it's so simple and so cheap and so easy. And I think it's what most leaders know and realize and understand, but they may not express as much as they should because they don't realize the value of it. So
Mhm.
it's our job as coaches to be able to put that out there. Like, what, I know you know it and you feel it, but you're not expressing it. And you get a lot of return on investment by just saying sometimes, what, thanks a lot for this, and be specific about it, right?
Yeah.
It's more than a high five, but at the same time, it's like something where I think it's a lot of times said, well, that's their job. Well, right? We pay them to do that. But once in a while to say, you know what, you went above and beyond when you did this, right? And in
Yeah.
certain things to point out like that, it's volumes that people don't realize that the value that comes with that, right? And the return on investment of recognizing that and putting that forward. I think that's something that's often ignored, and it's not really on the radar of a lot of bosses or a lot of,
Sure.
they don't think of it like that, but it's our job as coaches to be able to put that forth and say, this is important.
Yeah.
And
Acknowledging it publicly, right? Acknowledging it publicly so that the employees' peers are also aware of that acknowledgement from management, whatever that looks like.
absolutely. And that's what people talk about on social media. It's like, oh my God, right? Like my boss asked me this, my boss said this to me, or they sent me this letter, or they did some kind of thing that was something that's not normal. Because typically when you get called in the office for something, it's like, what did I do wrong? If I said, you know what, Michael, this is something, I need to see you in my office.
Mm-hmm.
Right away, you're going to think, oh God, what did I do wrong? What did I screw up? What did I do wrong? But wouldn't it be great to catch somebody doing something right, and you calling somebody into the office and saying, you know what, 2 seconds, right? You've done a great job. I saw how you dealt with this client. This is something that, this client, this is what was a result of you doing what you did. This is a great thing that you did. And that customer service is really shine. And this really shows in the vision that we have of our company. Thank you very much. Carry on.
Yeah.
What happens? You walk out, that person walks out of the office, everybody goes, what happened? What did Michael say? Oh my gosh. And then Michael just gave me some credit for what I did. And what that does is that it facilitates good behavior, right? And like you didn't have a lot of effort to put into that. It took no time, no money to be able to make that happen, right?
Yeah. And you're just basically creating goodwill.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I dig it. Lori, this has been great. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think the main thing is this is when you're a coach, and I know this, from my experience being a coach for years, is that the main thing is being a coach is just as important as having people and working with people to follow through on what you implement. Mm-hmm. So being a coach is giving them the tools, giving them opportunities to ask questions, and being okay with the mistakes that they make, understanding that they're not perfect, and being okay with being vulnerable and expressing that to you. But at the same time, being able to follow through and making sure that they follow through and implement whatever that you teach, and be able to follow through on that. I think where coaching goes bad or goes wrong or gets a bad rap is from putting forth and implementing systems that you think people are ready for, and you assume or you presume and you understand from the people that you teach that things are going to go ahead and move forward without checking on it. Because I think you need to help and support and figure out, some people need more support than others, but to be able to give out the tools and make sure that you see that they use the tools, that they get outcomes from what you teach them. I think that, from what I've learned so far in coaching, as long as I have, I think that is the one thing that is the key to success, is to be able to make sure that you have a system to make sure that things that you implement are being followed through, and that there's a plan in place to be able to prove that this is a habit that has been implemented and has been incorporated and embedded, so that it carries on without you being there and being present in the situation every time. So you don't have to be there all the time. Your job as a coach is to be able to put out the tools and they carry through. Yeah. Being able to have some system in place to follow through and make sure that it's actually happening. Right. I think that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Lori, you also have a complimentary coaching session that you'd like to offer our viewers and listeners. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So whoever wants to meet with me and talk more about those things, what I would like to do is, if whoever wants to do that would send me what are the barriers or what are the problems to solve, and send a couple solutions or some of the actions that were taken in order to solve that. And what are some of the things that are the sticking points, or so we can, really get at what the issues are to fix it. the more clarity that I have and how to be able to manage that to help and to support people would be great. A great way to do that. But I'm happy to spend at least an hour with as long as I have information ahead of time, then I can support, moving forward.
Beauty. Lori, where can our listeners and viewers connect with you online?
It's mostly LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best way. So it's Lori Windish Irvine on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Lori, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for joining us as well. We'll see you all next time. Cheers.
Great.